Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we get to continue my favourite series to make, and that's the perfect off-season. We've already looked at the top 4 picks in the NFL draft, and today we're going to go to number 5. That's the Cincinnati Bengals. Now obviously Cincinnati hit the home run last year, first overall pick in the draft, and took Joe Burrow out of LSU. Now the aim is, how can we give him the best possible chance of succeeding on this valuable rookie contract? Normally, I was sort of talking about coaching, but as there wasn't many coaching changes, we'll chat about that quickly now. Zach Taylor is staying the head coach in Cincinnati by the looks of things, against what I see as some better judgment. I don't think he's done anything to necessarily warrant that job right now. I don't think he's earned to keep it. But in saying that, if he is comfortable under Burrow and Burrow is comfortable under him, you can't truly put a price on situations like that. But that's all the talking about our coaching out of the way. Let's get right into the video. Straight away, let's have an overview of the team's needs. In reality, the Cincinnati Bengals have a few needs. They could use a yards after catch receiver, they could use some D line help and some edge help. But I think the big thing about them is they need an O line. Their O line is abysmal. It is turnstiles from left to right, and that needs to change. So, our main aim for this off season, in my opinion, is yes, you want to maybe improve a few defensive positions, but I'm looking at how can I fix the offense and make Burrow the superstar that he can be. Starting off with the re-signing and the cuts, we're going to make a few big name cuts here in Cincinnati because I think it's time. At the tail end of last season, Brandon Allen and Samaje Perine looked like a good punching partnership. Perine looked powerful in his running and was able to find the end zone on 3 occasions in the last 3 games, and I think he gets re-signed, but we'll talk about that in a second. But re-signing him, with Joe Mixon coming back off injury, it leaves Giovanni Bernard as an expendable piece. If you cut Gio Bernard, you can make $5 million back in the cap, and I think they have to do it. Similarly, I think it's time to say goodbye to a stalwart of the defense, and that's Geno Atkins. Injury riddled last year, playing limited snaps, he doesn't seem to be worth a value anymore. Yes, you could theoretically trade him for a very, very low pick, not much at all, but cutting him saves you $6 million. That reimburses you $11 million back, putting your cap room before you go re-signing at about $46 million. Now, the fact you've lost a running back and you've lost a D tackle does mean the draft changes slightly for you to fill in holes, but not too much. It's 2 players that didn't play considerable moments last year. Gio Bernard played a lot more than he would, but that was only because of Joe Mixon's injury. We'll look at the re-signings, and straight off the bat, there's a couple of larger names that I want to get back, and I think the 2 of them sort of follow round of William Jackson and Carl Lawson. William Jackson, the cornerback, I think is highly underrated. As you can see, I'm a Dolphins fan, so I watch all Dolphins games, and I watched Dolphins versus the Bengals this year, and the Bengals put up a bit of a fight, but William Jackson really locked down half a field all game. It was the rest of the DBs that sort of let him down, but William Jackson seems good enough, and I think at that age, 3 years, $18 million is a good price for him, and you can bring him back at that price. Similarly, Carl Lawson, it's tough to find defensive ends in free agency. It's notorious they get overpaid. A report came out today that Judon from the Ravens wants over $20 million a year to play. That is ludicrous money, and for that price, I think you retain Carl Lawson. He's not necessarily been a firelighter in the defense. He's not necessarily making the big plays, but I think he's consistent enough to earn this contract. 4 years, $32 million, about $8 million a year, I think is a fair deal for him. It works both ways. It still gives him another chance at a big deal before he gets into his 30s. And then you're looking at a few sort of smaller deals to re-sign. Randy Bullock, Jordan Evans, Samaje Perine, as I talked about earlier on, a good end of the season. Depth pieces, only $1 million or 2 each year. And then finally, I want to re-sign Brandon Allen. I think he's deserved it. Now, I think there's an argument to be made that a team in the NFL with an injury-prone quarterback might go out and pay him a little bit of money to back him up. Just a little bit. You could be looking at someone like, what team have injury-hit quarterback problems? I was going to say Steelers, but obviously they've just signed Dwayne Haskins as a backup to go behind Roethlisberger. But I think Brandon Allen deserved the contract. Now, doing all these deals, it leaves the Bengals with about $32 million in free agency. I am so excited about the Bengals this year. I think their potential is off the charts. People don't realise, they were talking about how well Burrow did last year, but when you sit down and look at the weapons Burrow had to deal with and the O-line he had to work behind, it's ridiculous that he was able to put up the stats he did. So I think our aim in this free agency class is to get a couple of O-line pieces and maybe a defensive piece just to shirt up it, okay? So let's go straight into free agency. Straight off the bat in free agency, let's not beat around the bush. Let's hit the O-line. There's about 5 big names. There's Brandon Sheriff, Joe Tooney, David Andrews, Trent Williams, Corey Linsley, and I want 2 of them. And I think the 2 that fit best are you need a well-rounded offensive line players in this setup. In different setups, you could want a run mauler. Someone like Trent Williams, in my opinion, is a great pass blocker in fairness to him, but he is a mauler in the run game. That is his strength. And I think the Bengals are going to be a very balanced offense this year. So in doing so, I'm going to fall on Joe Tooney and Corey Linsley from the Patriots and the Packers respectively. Joe Tooney's a big contract, don't get me wrong. 5 years, $65 million, just under $13 million a year. But you cannot put a price on O-line at this point in Burrow's career. If you put a good O-line long term in front of him, he's going to grow into the star he can be, and you're not going to look back. Similarly, Corey Linsley, 3 years, $27 million, $9 million a year at centre. It's going to help that hole in centre. You've got a guard in a centre now. Yes, Jonah Williams has looked spotty in his career. Yes, he missed 2 seasons ago with a season-ending injury. But last year he didn't look great. He didn't look like the pick he should be. But now we've got a centre, we've got a guard. This class has tackles in it in the draft, and we're going to look to pick one of those up, I think, to at least solidify half of the line. We've looked at our offense. Let's have a little dabble at defense. I think someone that the Bengals could take a fire on is Jadeveon Clowney. Had a down year in Tennessee, not been great, but his talent is unquestionable. At 1 year, $6 million. We already know, he proved it last year. The Dolphins offered him a long-term deal. He turned it down to take a 1-year deal so that he could basically have a great year and then get a maximum contract. It didn't work. It's worked the opposite way. Now he's regretting his decision. I think 6 or 7 million on a 1-year deal is going to get him in because he's not going to be worth much more. Because people seem to hear stories about Clowney and fall into the trap of, he had a down year. No, he didn't have a down year. Clowney had a bad year for any defensive lineman, never mind himself to his standards. 1 year, $6 million, fills a hole on the edge, can play the outside, can play a bit of the 3-man D-line as well. He's large enough and strong enough. And then I think the only other player looking at free agency for them is a cornerback. We're letting Mackenzie Alexander walk. Only playing about 60% of the snaps this year and didn't look great in coverage. Let William Jackson down, in my opinion. And we're going to bring in Chidobe Awuzie out of the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas has shown over the last few years that they're the Showtime team. They'll pay their offensive players, but they'll let possibly their best players walk. Byron Jones deserved the contract more than Amari Cooper, more than Ezekiel Elliott, but was let go. People like to talk bad about Byron Jones if he doesn't get interceptions. The man is an absolute lock man corner. Anyone who watches football enough will see that he is elite at what he does. And I really like Chidobe Awuzie. I think he's very fast, he's agile, his pressing isn't great, but when he gets to the line, he's fast enough to make up mistakes, and I think he helps William Jackson. I think it elevates a whole defense. You look at defenses in the NFL that have one good corner and one bad corner. First one to mind is the Eagles, and they get passed all over because you just look at Slay and go, well, I'm not going to throw near you, but I'm going to throw everywhere else. I think Bengals had a bit of that this year where people tried to leave William Jackson alone and went elsewhere, but this allows you to have 2 young corners that can grow together, and it keeps the roster young as well, which I think is a big deal in this season. So in my opinion, 4 players I would love to see signed by the Bengals are Joe Tooney, Corey Linsley, Jadeveon Clowney, and Chidobe Awuzie. Now, this leaves a couple of million as well for depth, and also it doesn't actually put them up against the wall cap-wise. And I think roster-wise, it puts him in a very good position. Yes, offensively, we're still looking for a receiver that can do things with the ball in his hand, but we know how deep this receiver class is. So I'm going to look to pick that up in the draft. Still need maybe a tackle in the draft, and if possible, I would like an interior defensive lineman. So we're going in the draft with those goals, but at the minute, I think this Bengals roster is young, it's exciting, and these pieces make it very competitive in the AFC, where a lot's going to change next year. A lot of young teams are going to improve. But with that being said, let's get straight into the mock draft. So here we are at the mock draft, and I think Cincinnati are in a position to get one of the best value picks in the draft by a mile. The way this draft is falling, no one is debating that Penei Sewell isn't one of the best tackles of all time in a draft aspect. Now I'm going to draft him and then we'll have a wee chat about him. The way this draft falls, in my opinion, it does go quarterback, and then I think Miami do take a receiver or trade out of that pick, and then Atlanta can do what they want, but they're not going to take a tackle. Penei Sewell is incredible value at 5, and I think the Bengals hit a home run with him. It leaves the left-hand side of your O-line as Sewell, Joe Thuney, Corey Linsley. That is great. That is one of the best left side of the O-lines in the NFL. So now we look at where else can we improve. We look at the draft board. We want a run after catch receiver. And what I'm going to do now is something a little bit different. I've paused the draft at Tennessee. At the New York Jets. I believe there's a couple of teams here could want a receiver, and Devontae Smith is still on the board. I don't think the Jets will take him, so I'm going to see if I can't trade in to the Steelers. Now I understand the Steelers will be a hard team to trade with, but I think it's a position we have to look to get into. What's it going to cost us? The question I'm having is it possible for us to keep 62? It doesn't look like it's going to be. So they're going to want 62 in this deal, and I think that's okay. 62 means they're giving up too much. 69, sorry, if I go 88, we're giving up too much. If I go 102, I go 119 maybe. It's a bit, you can see it's a bit awkward sort of manhandle these trades, but this is the trade we're going to make. We're going to come up 24, give up 38, give up 69, and also grab a late 6th round pick in the process. Yes, we're giving up a lot here, but when you watch what happens, the Jets are going to take an edge, which leaves us on the board to take Devontae Smith at 24. He has fallen in the draft, and I think when you do these drafts, it's important. Yes, you want realism, but you also have to take what's on the board. That is two in my personal rankings. That's 2 of the top 6 players in the draft that we've just got for the Bengals. What a draft! It gives you the receiver you need, and it then gives you the tackle. The only position I'm looking at now that I would like a little bit of help on is maybe an interior defensive lineman, but we'll get there with our next pick. But I'll skip to it now to waste this time. And we're back on the clock at 102 in the 4th round, and it's a tough one. I talked about how we needed interior defensive line. I don't necessarily like anyone at this price there. Talked about how could maybe use a bit of DB help. Similarly, I don't like the price. I think we're going to go again. Deontay Brown is the stereotypical guard. If you had to draw one, you would draw Deontay Brown. He is massive, he is strong, he's a mauler. You're going to try to do what the Dolphins did last year and overhaul an offensive line in one season. But do it with a bit of finances behind it. Back you financially. And I think it's the best choice. Now we're looking at still needing some defensive players just to fill up some depth, but we'll look at that in our next pick. But I'll skip to it now to save you time. Back on the clock at 133. I've looked through the whole class and there's no one I'm in love with at these picks. So I think we're going to take the best player available, and it's Richie Grant, the safety out of UCF. He gives a bit of versatility. He's a good cover. He's a good tackler. He can play up and down in the box. We're letting Sean Williams hit the free agency market, so we could use some safety help to go alongside Jesse Bates, who I haven't spoken enough about in this video. He is elite. One of the best safeties in my books in the whole league, and I think giving him a bit of help in the DB situation would be a great job for the Bengals to do. So we're going to take Richie Grant at 133. And then I think that's our draft really over. There's a couple of depth pieces I'll pick, but we'll see them later in the video. So I'll get back to you in a minute with our draft recap. And we're back with our draft recap. The draft just went perfectly for the Bengals. We've taken Penei Sewell, the best tackle in the draft. We've taken Devontae Smith, the best wide receiver in the draft. We've taken Deontay Brown, a mauler interior offensive lineman. And we've taken Richie Grant, a safety out of UCF. These are holes the team needed. And we've done a magical thing of filling our problems and drafting BPA, best player available. When you do that, you're going to be successful. Overall, I think the Bengals are such an exciting team this offseason. I think when you've got the quarterback, who we know has the talent in Burrow, it's about giving him the chance. Now, he has the receiving core, Devontae Smith. Tyler Boyd, Auden Tate, T. Higgins. I'm impressed with that receiver core. His offensive line could look like Sewell, Tooney, Lindsley, Deontay Brown, maybe Bobby Hart at right tackle. That's a good offensive line. Defensively, we've brought a few pieces in. Richie Grant, Chidobe Awuzie. We've re-signed players like Jordan Evans. We've let Geno Atkins go. The team gets younger, and I think it gets better, more importantly. Zach Taylor has a big year in his hands to prove he deserves to be a head coach in the league, but we'll find out sooner rather than later whether he can do it. If you have any other problems with this rebuild, please let me know in the comments below. I love chatting to fans of different teams. I'll hopefully get this fired up onto a Bengals Reddit page to get their opinions, because I love listening to players and teams of their own fan bases and their opinions on the matter. But without further ado, thank you very much for watching. I'll have another video posted tomorrow of a different rebuild, but I hope you have a great day. I'll see you soon.